Well, hello, this is the Doc Renfro. With us today, we are lucky to have UNI political science graduate Alisha Thompson, class of 2017, which seems forever ago, living the high life in Baltimore, Maryland, working for a nonprofit, Thread Inc., which she'll tell us all about. But first, Alisha, welcome to the program.
Nice. Thank you for having me.
You
It's
bet.
been a few years.
It has. It really seems like a long time ago. So, first, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? And how'd you sort of get to UNI?
So I'm from a little bit of everywhere. At least that's how it feels. I was originally from Seattle, Washington, lived there till I was 11, and then moved halfway across the country to good old Brandon, Iowa. If you aren't familiar, it's home of Iowa's largest frying pan. Not the state, not the US's largest, not the world's largest, just Iowa's largest frying pan. Um, and in going to or moving to Brandon, I ended up going to the independent school district, and through the Iowa Mathematics and Science Academy in conjunction with Outward Bound, that began my initial journey to going to UNI. I tell people that I started going to UNI in 2009 and I graduated in 2017 because all throughout high school I would attend summer classes.
So, when you were in high school, were there other places that were on your short list, or were you always going to be a Panther?
So I actually didn't know that UNI existed for a long time. Again, not from Iowa originally. And so I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go. I knew that staying in Iowa would be easier just because of family, but I was also open to going elsewhere. But after having spent 3 summers at UNI felt like home. I built up a community at UNI, and I didn't really want to leave it, not initially.
Right on. So there you are. Then you come in as a freshman. You live in the dorms on campus at this.
Yep, Ryder Hall.
And so, are you a declared major at this point, or are you not too sure? Or what's the deal?
I was a declared psychology major. I wanted to work with kids that had gone through trauma. I felt like I could really do a lot of good work with them as I had experienced a lot of trauma in my life. And then thought maybe I'd work and angle my way into working with like military psych or child psych. And honestly, I had never considered political science. I didn't really follow politics a whole lot. I didn't really pay attention to world news. I liked international, I liked following, sounds terrible, morbid. I would always read about genocides and wars, but didn't really pay much attention to politics other than that. And I didn't even realize that was politics at first.
What point was there a particular class, or was it just a slow evolution that you changed your mind and switched majors? Tell us about that process.
Yeah, so as part of the liberal arts core requirements, I was required to take a class along the lines of international relations. Can't remember which subgrouping that was, but IR was the class that I chose. And my professor, Laura Janik, was amazing. She's no longer at UNI, but I'm really thankful to her and being able to take her class. So she was my international relations professor. And then we had Dennis Damon as my intro to American politics professor. And the two of them kind of convinced me that maybe politics would be something that, or political science would be something that would be up my alley, especially since I would always come in with weird facts about different countries or places. And so by the by, I declared for a double major in political science and psychology, which then became a double major in political science and global studies. And that's kind of what started that journey.
That's great. And I understand, if I remember right, you had spent some time first in South Korea doing some language acquisition, or was it just broader than that? What was the deal there?
So in 2014, I went to South Korea. It was my first time overseas as an exchange student. I was supposed to stay there for about 5 months. I ended up staying there for closer to 10. And the goal was to learn about I guess, East Asian politics from a hopefully East Asian perspective, while at the same time acquiring the language. So I studied Korean for the year that I was there, while also learning about North and South Korean relations.
Yeah, so pretty valuable potentially skill set. Because I got here in 2014, and I remember that you were pretty, knowledgeable on Korea and Korean as the language and all of that. But I also remember that you got interested in the Middle East and Arabic. And if I remember correctly, I encouraged you to do an intensive Arabic study through the elite Middlebury program. And if I remember right, you actually listened to me and did that. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I listen sometimes. So I really wanted to go to the Middle East before I wanted to go to Korea, but I started college in 2012, which of course is right after the Arab Spring. So a lot of those programs were kind of shut down. They weren't really options for me. So to Asia I went, and I still really wanted to dig into the Middle East a bit more, and I really liked the idea of learning Arabic. And yeah, so I followed your advice and I went to Middlebury for 8 weeks, or sorry, 6 weeks, 8 weeks one summer in 2016, studied the language and, sorry, announcements.
Marquez Coleman, please report to the main office for dismissal. Thank you.
Because you have to remember, Alisha is joining us from, are you in a high school, Baltimore High School?
I'm in a Baltimore City high school, yeah.
Yeah, Baltimore City High School. So you're going to have these announcements, folks, just preparing you.
So sorry about that. So I ended up attending the Arabic language intensive summer program through Middlebury College for 8 weeks in the summer of 2016, where I actually had to sign a contract stating that I would not speak English for the duration of the 8 weeks.
That is the infamous Middlebury language contract, one of the things that makes them so good, yet so challenging, shall we say.
Very much so. I went from knowing almost absolutely nothing of the language to being able to have full sentences and recite poetry. And the way they teach is really interesting because you learn a lot about current events and kind of how to interpret current events before you learn things like I need to go to the bathroom.
Right. Well, because it's all connected, really. And as you would have learned the difference between hammam and hammam, bathroom or geese, might be important to know if you if you were in a hotel lobby, let's say, in Cairo. So that's good. I always encourage students, regardless of their major or intent, to try to get some kind of language acquisition. And you certainly took advantage of that, and that's awesome. So there you are. You're going. Your political science major. What year did you make the big jump from psych to poli sci?
It was either right before I went to South Korea or right after I came back. So it was either in February of 2014. Sorry, it would
So
have been
like sophomore or junior? What is it?
It would have been my sophomore year. Yeah, I think it was the first semester, actually, my sophomore year, I made the switch.
Right on. And then you never looked back, right? You
I never looked
all the
back.
good classes and made all the great friends and had all the great professors and all that good stuff that the political science department at UNI is known for. Now, here really comes interesting stuff. Tell us, you're graduating, and like anyone that's getting close to graduating, that senior year, you start thinking, well, now what am I going to do? So tell us about that whole transition.
So it was getting towards the end of my last year of undergrad. I took 5 years instead of 4. So that's why I graduated in 2017. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I was very adamant with myself that I did not want to go to grad school. So everything I did initially was that I wanted to apply to jobs. I was applying to jobs. I applied to Peace Corps, got accepted, got invited. And I was working through that. The first time I was working through that process, I ended up getting an acceptance for the only grad school I applied to, because a friend of mine told me to apply for the University of Brunei Darussalam Masters of Public Policy and Management program, and pretty much threatened me with good times that if I did not apply, they would no longer be my friend. And so I took that threat to heart and I applied anyway. per their advice, because sometimes I listen, and I ended up getting accepted. So instead of going into Peace Corps, which was initially what I was going to end up doing, I ended up
I
flying.
probably would have told you to do that. I don't remember you asking me, but I would have told you to, because Peace Corps is a great opportunity. It doesn't pay much, but the experience, and I think there's some student debt relief and all kinds of good stuff.
No, Peace Corps was an amazing opportunity, and I'm glad I was able to. I was glad I was offered the chance, but it ended up it's my interest in Peace Corps alone has been really interesting. So I ended up going for the grad program instead because it was also a paid program. What student loans I did have would be put in forbearance, and I ended up moving to a Southeast Islamic monarchy for the better part of a year. And through that program, also got to spend some time at the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University. So got to learn a little bit of Malay as well.
Yeah. So that is, for the viewers, Alisha has had a number of unique experiences that really any one of those you could write a book about. But she has many chapters of a full book for sure. But now, so you get done with that, and then what?
So I decided a second time to finish that degree program. Had my diploma handed to me by the Crown Prince of Brunei, and that was wild in and of itself. And I was coming back stateside. By that time, I had been accepted a second time to Peace Corps, invited a second time, this time to serve in Uganda, had all the plans and intentions to do that, but decided I wanted to spend a little more time stateside after having been gone for more than a year, in part because my parents were getting old, my family members were getting old, and I felt like I need to be back a little bit before I went back overseas again. So instead of moving back to Iowa, which I knew intimately, I decided to move to Baltimore, Maryland. So I moved to Baltimore, Maryland in
Oh,
2018.
hang on, but hang on. You have to say, what do you mean? I mean, is this random? What? There must have been, right, something that drew your attention to Baltimore?
No.
No, you just said I want to go to Baltimore because
When I moved to Baltimore, the only things I really knew about it were the Ravens and Freddie Gray.
so most of the time that would not be on the move to Baltimore, like postcard. What? I mean, that may have gotten your attention, but did you have a job at that point, or were you just going to say, I'm moving to Baltimore and we're going to see what happens?
No, so I moved to Baltimore to see what happens. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I may have to go check on that. But I moved to Baltimore and wanted to see what happened. It was close to DC, and I love DC. And by close, I mean about an hour mark right away. So that was something that was really a huge interest to me. And part of why it is that I wanted to go. With that said, I knew nothing about the city. I didn't have a job lined up. I had maybe $3,000 in my pocket or in my accounts. So I was very much flying by the seat of my pants there.
Yeah.
1 second, I apologize. I'll be right back.
No problem. I'll just pause here for our editor can handle that. All right, so we're back for whoever is editing this, and we'll pick up where we left off. So you got to Baltimore and you had $3,000 in your pocket and you're searching around for jobs. Did you sort of take jobs before you landed at Thread Inc., or what's the story there?
So when I moved to Baltimore, I decided I wanted to work for a nonprofit or work in the nonprofit sector for a little while. I thought it would be a good way to learn the community that I was living in and the community that I had moved to, just because I'd never been here before. So again, I moved to Baltimore, had $3,000 in my pocket, knew nothing about the city other than the Ravens and Freddie Gray, and needed work. So I found a job working at a nonprofit that dealt with food insecurity. Specifically food insecurity amongst those who have things like diabetes, chronic kidney disease, cancer, HIV. And through that, I was able to build up a little bit of a community. After 3 years of working there and a couple of promotions later, I decided I needed a shift. I needed a change of pace and a change of space. And a friend of a friend told me that his job was hiring, and so I applied. And that's how I came to find myself at Thread.
Okay, so this is the Thread Inc. position. So tell the viewers a little bit about what you do now.
So I work with high school students, not typically what you'd expect of a political science major. A lot of what I do is geared towards helping high school students attain self-efficacy. Uh, and in order to do that, we help build bridges across lines of difference. So you think about in political science, you have all those classes on diplomacy and intersectionality and just kind of like how different viewpoints come together to create a whole picture. Historical context as well plays a huge role. And in my role, my coworker and I, we work with the community in the form of volunteers to help build bridges for high school students to attain their own personal success, whether it be academically or in their careers later on. So we start working with high school students when they're about 14 or 15 years old, freshmen, and we stick with them for 10 years. They can think that they quit us, but they don't. They can't, because we don't quit them. We're just always there.
Kind of like a student loan officer, except not
Except
asking for money. Yeah.
No, we're just after their space and their time. So what we do is we help guide students towards high school graduation or high school attainment, GED attainment. And once they receive that, we then help them build out towards post high school pathways. So we start talking to them about, what they're going to do after high school.
And I believe you were telling me the other day that the statistics are pretty clear that people in your program actually have wildly disparate outcomes than those that aren't, all things being held equal.
Yeah, so in the city of Baltimore, if you as a freshman are on the bottom 25% of your class, your graduation rate is 6% within 4 years. I believe that's the exact statistic. But with Thread, with what we do, that graduation rate turns into 60%.
Wow.
So 60% of Thread students graduate within 4 years. And I think the goal is 75% in 5. That's the statistic I'm not sure about.
That is impressive. There's no question about that. Because once you graduate, because that metric, from that flows all sorts of other metrics. Could be
another announcement.
This is what happened. I remind the viewers, Alisha is sort of giving us this time here while she's trying to also do her job. So it's very nice of her to do this. I won't hold you for very long, but I do want to ask, now that you've had the perspective of being an alum for a few years, and you can look back with greater maturity and so forth upon your young undergraduate college days, are there any words of wisdom that you would want to share with a potential, maybe a young student coming into college, or maybe that freshman or sophomore that's thinking about what they want to major in? Any sort of words of wisdom there?
Just because you major in political science doesn't mean you have to run for office.
Right.
Sure, that's what you want. That is entirely up to you to pursue that goal. But I value a lot of the subjects that I studied while a political science major at UNI in particular. My professors were really solid about helping us with our writing and helping us learning how to communicate across different boundaries, because as everyone probably knows, things are a little hard to communicate across right now. Those lines of difference and the lines of differences in politics are pretty profound at this point in time. And so learning how to communicate with people across lines of difference is extremely important. And at the same time, because of the nature of the political science faculty when I was there and the student body when I was at UNI, you also got to learn a lot about people, cultures, frames of mind. You got to learn about how different people react to different things just because of their own historical context and memory. And honestly, if you look even further into what we do in the city I live in, it helped me learn a lot about Baltimore as a city, the history that goes into making a city like Baltimore into what it is today, whether that be good, bad, or otherwise. I'll let you make that decision, um, that judgment call. But you can use a political science degree outside of politics. You don't have to work for the city government. You don't have to run for office. You don't have to work as a staffer if you don't want to. You don't have to be a lawyer if you don't want to. You can make the degree work for you.
And that is a hell of a good way to leave it. So I'll let you get back to potentially saving people's lives, right? And I will get back to being a suburban dad and professor here. I thank you again for your time, Alisha. It's always good to chat with you, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, Doc.